look into your pet's eyes, what do you see? A reflection of yourself? A glimpse into a world untamed by human expectations? Or perhaps just a creature sharing the same space, navigating this chaotic world alongside you? Welcome to the Companions Collective, where we dig into the human-animal bond and uncover the messy, beautiful reality of it all. I'm Angela Schneider, your guide through the depths of our shared connection with our companion animals. Join me as we explore the tangled web of love, loss, and everything in between that defines our relationships with the creatures who know us best. I know you know what I'm talking about when I say sometimes our veterinarians aren't the best communicators. Hell's bells, Dani McVety told us as much on the podcast last fall. They're introverts. They'd rather be dealing with our animals, not us. So sometimes they tell us a lot of words that go in one ear and out the other. Or we run home and start Googling, doing our best to remember the words and take our best shot at spelling them. Enter Tyler Sugerman. An emergency vet in Tacoma, Washington, Tyler bridges the gap between vet jargon and pet guardians on his podcast, Vetsplanation. With a goal to help pet guardians keep their animals happy, healthy, and safe, Tyler breaks the science of vet care down into simple, understandable terms. And today, he shares that journey with us. Tyler Sugerman, hello.
Hello, how are you doing, Angela?
I'm really good.
Good.
Welcome from the other side of my state, Washington.
Yes, yes.
How are things over in Tacoma?
Nice and sunny right now, which is great. I get to look out the window right now, which is fantastic.
Well, that's weird for the coast. Sunny.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, especially I'm a night shifter, and so I don't usually see the sun. So this is really nice.
Oh my goodness. So let's get started with a little bit about you. You started working in the vet medicine business at the age of 13. What the heck possessed you to start working at 13, A, when
Yeah,
you should be out riding your bike and playing baseball or something,
right.
and why vet medicine?
Yeah, so I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I always was rescuing some sort of animal. I had, lizards that had their tails cut off, and of course, that really was just that they fell off. But I didn't know that as a kid. But I would be rescuing those birds that hit windows. I would be bringing it into the house. At one point, I worked at a place when I was a little bit older, and they had a sick chicken, and I had a chicken in my house for a while. My mom didn't even know about it for 2 weeks. But I always was trying to help, animals ever since I was really little. And so then in junior high, they had this program that if you were really interested in certain types of work that they would allow you to go and shadow or go and do hours there for a little while. And so I did that for veterinary medicine. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do that or not, but I was really interested in it since I've always been helping animals. So within a week of just shadowing them, they're like, "Do you want a job? Because you're great." So I started working there. I worked in the kennels. Well, they put me in the kennels, but really it was that I was an assistant for a while, and then they started having me do even X-rays and monitoring anesthesia before I was 18, which wasn't illegal then, but is illegal now. But
You're not the
I
reason it's illegal, is it?
I hope not. I mean, they let me continue, so I'm guessing not. Yeah, but yeah, they started so I learned a lot from a really young age, and then even before I was 18, I had moved out of the house. I started as a veterinary assistant, sort of a technician, up in Northern California. I went through tech school, and then kept realizing that I just wanted more and more information. I just wanted more and more knowledge. So went to vet school, and and that wasn't until I was in my late 20s, so it wasn't an immediate decision. I was a vet tech for quite a while. I think it was 20 years before I actually went to vet school. And then went into emergency medicine after that.
Why emergency medicine?
I always thought I was going to do general practitioner work. I thought I was going to do puppy vaccines and stuff. But when I was in my third year of vet school, I actually realized that I went into like one of the preceptorships where you can go and be in the emergency hospital and see what it was like. And I really liked it for those 2 weeks. And so I decided to do another couple weeks, like 4 weeks in my fourth year. So I was like, well, even if I'm a general practitioner, I need to know how to do emergencies, right? So I went back for my fourth year, did another couple of weeks, and I just loved it. I just fell in love with it. It was like a calling essentially, and then ended up doing an internship in emergency medicine and have done emergency medicine since.
I think there are some very intrinsic rewards we all get from being in a pet-related business.
Mhm.
Certainly, there are lots of rewards that come from being a vet. Do you see a difference between the rewards you get in general practice versus emergency practice?
Absolutely. I feel like general practice is a lot of management of diseases. You're helping people like almost, I want to say at a slower pace, like everything is more of lots of communication back and forth and trying different things versus mine is more of an immediate gratification. The pet comes in an emergency and I need to immediately be able to solve the problem and try to fix that pet. So I think that it's just a different mindset. Also, when you're in general practice, a lot of it is doing one patient at a time versus an emergency. I have to have maybe three patients at a time, maybe 12 patients at a time.
Yikes.
Sometimes in the hospital, we have 16 patients, plus I have the other 30 patients that I have to see for that night. So you're juggling a lot of things at one time. I think that I always like the not knowing what the next thing is going to come in the door.
That's what I always loved about journalism.
Yeah.
What I imagine that you see a full range of injuries,
Mhm.
illnesses, etc. Can you dig into that a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, I see very simple things as far as like torn toenails all the way up to things that require emergency surgery right now. I have patients who are hit by cars a lot, lots of dog fight wounds, cat abscesses. I get a lot of surgeries. We talked a little bit about like gastropexies before this, so I have a lot of dogs that have bloat or GDV is the technical term for it.
Mm.
Where their stomach twists and it becomes an emergency right now, or dogs who have bleeding into their abdomen that we have to do surgery on. Lots of pets who have difficulty breathing, so we have to like figure out what is the difficulty breathing, getting them into oxygen and trying to help fix them there. And unfortunately, a lot of euthanasias as well. So it's quite a range that I see.
You see a lot of stomachs full of socks and toys too, don't you?
Absolutely, lots of foreign bodies.
What at what level of injury or illness should we wait to see our general practitioner tomorrow morning versus rushing in to see an emergency hospital?
Yeah, I think that there are certain things that you can kind of take into account. So one of them is going to be knowing your pet. So if your pet is the type of like, let's say maybe you have a cat and you know that cat vomits once a week. If that cat is vomiting and it's been once a week, that's probably not something that you need to be rushing in for. But if that cat is vomiting multiple times, will not stop, then we know that that's probably a much bigger deal and they probably need to come in. If they have been not eating but not vomiting, I'm always like, well, you might be able to wait unless you know that there's been like a sock that they ate or some sort of other object that they got into. Things like torn toenails and stuff like those are things that can wait for your regular vet unless they're very uncomfortable, or other things like skin issues. I have a lot of people who come in for skin issues, but I always tell them I am not an expert at this. Like, this is not my forte. So I will help you the best that I can, but you're going to need to see somebody else, for all of the follow-up stuff.
Do we treat our dogs or any of our pets in much the same way as parents treat their human children, wherein, some of us just might panic at any little
Mhm.
sniffle and get on to urgent care.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it's kind of the same way your very first pet, like you're kind of the same way. You're like a little overprotective. You're like, oh my God, they vomited once. We got to get them in, or they tore their toenail, we got to get them in the emergency right away. They coughed, we got to get them in. Versus then your second and third pet and fourth pet, you're like, they'll be okay. We'll see if they're okay.
I feel very seen right now. Poor Shep was rushed off to care,
Uh,
and every time anything happened, and now Bella, it's like,
right.
she'll be fine.
Like, you'll be okay. Yeah. We'll see how you do. Yeah.
Buck up, little girl, buck up.
Right, right.
And so,
Um,
how did COVID change your approach to emergency care? Because that must have really screwed a lot up.
Yeah, it was really, really hard. We had so many people who got pets and everybody was staying home. And so they saw their pets getting sick. And so we had tons and tons of people coming to the ERs to get treatment. Like for me, I'm very much I will see everybody, and so I almost never shut down my ER. But there was tons of people who did. There were of all the pet clinics that were around us, all the emergency clinics. I was the only one seeing pets for about a 40 to 50 mile radius. I had people coming from like I'm in Tacoma, but I had people coming from Oregon to see us, from Idaho to see us.
What?
Yeah, because there was nobody who would see them. And so they
Wow.
were they were driving that far just to come and see us because I would say, if you can get here, I will see you.
Wow.
But so that definitely changed my approach a bit because I had to be I really like being able to talk to people and educate them about what's going on with their pet, especially if it's something that's a long-term disease. I want them to understand what's happening. But when I have 60 other pets who are now waiting, it really became a challenge to do that. So instead, I actually created a podcast so I could hand people information and be like, hey, here is the information that you need to know because I don't have the time right now to sit down and talk to you about this. I have 2 minutes before I have to get to the next emergency that just walked through that door. So that definitely created a bit of a challenge because there were so many people who couldn't see all those things. So we were seeing so many things. And then also just the way that things were working, we had pet parents who were not allowed in the building that make them very anxious. Their pets were anxious. So we had this disconnect as well because we were trying to not get sick as vets so that we could continue to see our pets. But we at the same time had pet parents who were really upset because they weren't away from their pets because they've been with them on quarantine. And
Hmm.
now I'm asking them to step away from their pet at a time when they're really sick. And that almost created a bit of a distrust because they couldn't be there to see what was happening.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. So since then, like letting people back in and being able to talk to them face to face, I feel like that's helped quite a bit more, even though we still have quite a bit of pets more than we had seen before. It still helped to be able to like have that one-on-one with people.
It's crazy that hopefully COVID is in our rearview mirror, at least for
Mhm.
the time being.
Yeah.
But it had such an incredible impact on the entire world, but more
Yeah.
specifically, the veterinary care world, didn't it?
Absolutely. It had a huge, huge impact. Like people did not realize like how just like how we were almost like drowning because
Mm.
we couldn't get enough people to work. We were working on limited skeletal crews as well as trying to get so many more pets seen than we ever had before. And with less supplies because we had a lot of people, we had all of the hospitals taking a lot of our supplies. There were my friends who were in California. We had a couple who were criticalists, and their ventilators were being taken by human hospitals because humans were valued over pets, and so they had so many things that they could not do because they didn't have the equipment that they needed. We had to like worry about making sure we didn't use exam gloves very often because we had limited supplies of gloves and fluids, and it was crazy.
Wow.
Medications, yeah,
I did not know that kind of impact happened. That's
yeah.
insane. And obviously drug shortages too, I would imagine.
Yeah, lots of drug shortages. things that they were like, well, you can't have it because we need it in veterinary and we need it in human medicine first.
Yeah, of course. Um, so how are we progressing? And um, I mean, everybody has staff shortages now. How
Mhm.
is your clinic managing in the aftermath of it all?
Yeah, I think that it's gotten a lot better. Like so we had huge shortages, but now it's gotten much, much more manageable. We have more crews on now, which is great. We have more people who are coming back to work and are able to stay at work. So we're able to see a lot more, and we even have more doctors than we had before, which is also fantastic. Because that was another big problem, with me being an overnight doctor, unless one of the other overnight doctors could drop everything that they were doing and could come and work, that was it. We had to not see any pets for that day if for some reason one of us got sick. So now we have like two doctors on, and that's been a huge help.
Our society has shifted to a place where we're very opinionated and vocal about those opinions, and I know that vets can take an awful lot of abuse might be too strong a word, but then maybe it's not.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Um, how would you tell somebody who is young and thinking about entering vet medicine, what could you tell them to expect? Like, do the benefits outweigh those negatives?
Mhm. For me, been asked before, would I do this all over again? And I absolutely would.
Mhm.
Even though it can be really tough, and I've definitely had clients who have tried to punch me. I've had clients who've been verbally abusive towards me. Um, we have clients constantly say that we are in it for the money, and I'm like, if you knew how much debt I was in to do this job, whereas I could have been making three times the amount as a human doctor, or not even three. I think the last time I saw was like five times the amount as a human doctor.
Wow.
Like this, you would see that this is a much different story. Or, we get a lot of people getting really upset about costs of veterinary care as well. Like, well, I know what it costs to buy that object, and I know what it costs for it to be used in the human hospital, and we are nowhere near that.
Yeah.
But people don't see that, and so I think that that is, again, like it just becomes a little bit harder because people see what they pay for insurance stuff, but they don't see what you are actually paying for. Like they don't look at an itemized bill for like those kind of things. So when it comes to like a new veterinarian, if they decide that they do want to go into veterinary medicine, I think that they have to look at not only the bad things that are there, because there are going to be bad things on each day, but there's also so many good things that happen as well. Even if it's not through the pet parent themselves, it was through the pet. You still got to do something to be able to help that pet. And I really appreciate that I get to be the voice for that pet, even when the pet parent doesn't understand that.
Let's go back to the education aspect of it
Mhm.
then. You strike me as a very even-tempered, patient person. Um,
Thanks. I try to be.
yeah. Is it important to you for your human patients, your human clients, to understand exactly what's happening with their pet, especially if you're taking their pet behind a closed door?
Absolutely. I try to be very like I try to like make them understand like what I'm going to be doing. I don't want there to be any surprises. I will always tell them like this is what I want to go do. And if people are upset that they can't go back with them, I'll let them know why. Unfortunately, sometimes we have aggressive pets back there, or I have procedures that are going on back there that we don't want to have other people see, because I also don't want people to faint on the floor either. But
Fair.
um, but I try to make sure that they understand what we're doing, why we're going to be doing this, and most of the time, one of the other hard things on emergency medicine is I have to build rapport very, very quickly with people. And as long as I can do that, a lot of times people are okay with that. They're okay with me taking their pet back to do a rectal exam or to do an ultrasound really quickly, as long as I've explained those things to them.
Most of the vets I've encountered, and I think I spoke with Dani McVety about this not too long ago, but a lot of vets are introverts
Mhm.
and they they
Yes.
don't necessarily do very well with their human clients. Do
Right.
you identify as an introvert?
I guess in my work life, no. I'm very good at talking to people and obviously I have my podcast. And so
Yeah.
for that reason, for those like work related things, I am very much an extrovert. But when it comes to being at my house, I am very much an introvert. I like when we talked about getting this house that we live in now, my wife said she wanted to live as close to her friends as possible. And I was like, I want to live as far away and do not want to see a single person. They did find a house like that, so it was great. But she's much more of an extrovert, wants to go hang out with friends, which is whereas I'm like, all right, I'll go if we need to. But
Yeah. All I want is a fire pit and a whiskey. Thank you.
yes, yes, exactly. And my dog. Yep.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So now tell us about your podcast and how you use that as an outreach vehicle for your education.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Vetsplanation. So my goal is I want to be able to explain veterinary care for pets. I want them to understand what it is when I diagnose them with some disease. One of the things I have in there is like blocked cats. I see those constantly, cats who can't urinate. And there's so much that goes into it and so much that you need to understand for the future. I feel like sometimes I might tell you everything that you need to hear in 5 minutes, but how much of that did you actually retain?
Mm.
I can still send you home with a paper that you're probably going to lose. I lose mine constantly, right? It's like, so my best that when I was thinking about how I could like get this information out to people in a better way, I thought about doing podcasting because that way you can listen to it anytime. If you're like, I don't remember what he said, you can go back and listen to almost any. I use the same information when I'm talking to people, just I'm explaining it better and in more detail. If you have a person who, like I have this a lot, that the wife comes in with the pet and I diagnose with them something, and then the husband calls in 30 minutes later and is like, my wife has no idea what you've just explained to her. Can you explain it to me again? And so then I explain it to him, and then the wife will call back and be like, well, you explain it to him, but I don't understand it as well now. Can you explain it to me as well? So I was like, here is the podcast. You can
Mm.
both listen to it at the same time. And then if you have questions, then they can call me after that. But even if they need to know in the future when I talk about, like, say with bought cats, they have to have a very specific diet. So if I tell them I need you to not feed anything else but this diet, they can go back 10 years later and be like, he said, don't feed anything except for this diet. So let's not change this cat's diet.
Gotcha. And you keep it in very non-technical terms, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I want to make this as simplified as possible. One of the things that we learn in veterinary medicine is to speak veterinarian and to use these really big technical terms, and then we get out of school. And I think that's something that's lost is people don't understand as well how to like put that into simplified terms. And when I was a veterinary technician, that was something I saw a lot. I would go walk into the room after the doctor had been in there, and the people would say, I have no idea what he said. Could you explain to me what it is that he just diagnosed our dog with? So I learned like from that moment that you need to keep things a lot more simpler, especially not even because I don't think that people can handle it intellectually. I think it is also the emotional part as well. You're so emotional when I've diagnosed them with something that could be a life-threatening illness. And so you're not going to hear everything that I'm saying.
Right. And I think it's really important to have a resource like yours on the internet because if I just randomly go to Google and
Mhm,
search
mhm.
or do a reverse image, like Bella has a scaly nose. And I
Yeah.
know now that it's because it's drying out because she's 10.
Mhm.
But I could ask in a Facebook group and somebody's going to tell
Yeah.
me, oh, that looks like lupus. And I'm like, what?
Yes.
And or, I do a Google search and it comes up cancer. Your dog is full of
Right.
cancer just because her
Exactly.
nose looks weird.
Right.
Um, so there's a lot of not reliable information out there on the internet.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping by having the podcast that makes it to where you're getting that reliable information and not just information from Facebook groups and other people and, the Google searches where literally everything is cancer. That is definitely something I hear every day. They're like, well, I Googled it and it said that it was cancer. And I'm like, right. Well, luckily it's not. So this is great news.
Yeah, the last time I said I Googled it to my vet tech, she
Mhm.
was like, you know, I might have to slap you at some point. And I was like, "You probably should."
Yeah. I do appreciate that people want to get the information, and it's really hard to discern between what is the correct information and what is
Yeah.
incorrect information, you know.
Well, because I don't have the years of schooling to
Right.
let me know what is the correct information.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I have to trust my veterinarian, right?
Right. Exactly. Which is also hard. I get it. Like, especially if you don't know that person, and especially coming into the emergency, you don't know that person, you know.
Right. Okay, well, let's go into that a little bit more. You mentioned building a rapport, but not
Mhm.
having a whole lot of time to do that.
Yeah.
How do you very quickly establish trust when you're an emergency vet?
Yeah. So most of the time, like if I've already seen the pet in the back, a lot of times will comment on something that I really liked about their pet. Like, oh, I saw Fluffy in the back. He has a super cute face. I really liked him. And then asking information. Okay, so I know that you know your pet best at home. Tell me like what you saw was different at home. So it shows that it's not that I'm just taking the information that I'm doing just on my physical exam. It's also you are your pet's expert. I need you to tell me what you've seen at home. Because I do also get a lot of people who are like, well, a friend brought the dog in and they're like, well, I don't know. Don't you know? And I'm like, well, I don't know. The dog didn't tell me it vomited, so I have no idea. So just trying to build that rapport of like you are also your pet's health expert, and that's what I want you to be. I want you to be part of this journey. And so I want to make sure it's a reciprocal thing.
Three-part question.
Mhm.
How important is it to be a good advocate for your pet? What are some tips on how to be a good advocate for your pet? And when do you shut up and listen to the vet?
That's a good question. So I do think it is very important to be an advocate for your pet. You see them every day at home all the time, whereas I'm seeing them for 5 minutes, right? I have to get as much information as possible just from my exam or from the diagnostics that I can do. But really, like you're the person who sees your pet every day. So if if you feel like there is something abnormal, then there probably is something abnormal. And it's really hard sometimes for us to be able to find whatever it is. And it might not be that we don't find it for a week or two later, but it's still something that you should continuously be trying to look for. If you're still seeing those problems. So I do think it's really important to like be a really good advocate for them, especially if you feel like there is something wrong, because we even see this in human medicine constantly. My wife goes through this all the time that she goes in, she's like, well, this is the problem. She doesn't feel like she's listened to. And then later on, they're like, oh, you do have a problem. She's like, yes, I know. Like,
Told you
you
so.
know, right, exactly. And so I do feel like it's the same way for pet parents, that they really should be an advocate for them. What was the second question?
Tips on how to be a good advocate.
Yeah, thank you. So tips on how to be a good advocate. One, I'd say is to like ask questions especially if they've been given a diagnosis. So let's say they're diagnosed with diabetes. You should be asking the questions of how long, what is their prognosis? What do I have to expect lifelong for them? What are the follow-up diagnostics and stuff that I would need to do for that? What are the signs that you would normally see for diabetes? You want to make sure that you have complete understanding about that disease so that way you know for the next time what to do about it. Um, we talked a little bit before about bloat and the stomach twisting. It was really important to know what those signs were beforehand so that way you knew when to go into the vet. So even just when they are a puppy, if you or a kitten and you ask them, what are some of the common signs that you see with this breed? Or what are the common diseases you see with this breed, you'll have already gotten that information to know what to look for in the future. So if you have a giant breed dog, well, a lot of times I'll be talking to them about bloat and say, this is what you should expect. This is the things that you should be looking for. So that way, if it does happen one day, then you're on top of it. Or I'll also talk about if you have a giant breed dog, whenever they get spayed, I highly suggest having them pec seed at the same time.
Me
So
too.
yeah. So I feel like you need to be an advocate for them in both in when they're healthy and also when they are sick as well. And just knowing what all the medications do as well is another big tip. I have lots of people who come in and they're like, I don't know, they just take this yellow pill. So knowing what the medications are for, why they're taking them, what disease processes they have, even if it's just bringing in a binder of notes from your previous veterinarians.
Mm.
So that way we have those records, because a lot of times people don't think also about the fact that when I see them at night, their day veterinarian is closed. So we can't get those records.
Right.
And you
Okay.
can, yeah, and you can ask people, you can ask the veterinarian for a copy of those records every single time. And that way you just keep it in a binder. And so whenever they come in, you have one ready to go. Be like, okay, these are the things that they've been diagnosed with. This is the medication that they've been taking, and just being on top of that. I think that's for human medicine and for veterinary medicine as well, you know. And then third question.
When is it time to shut up and listen?
So I would say a lot of times when somebody starts saying, well, I Googled,
I apologize.
it's okay. I'd say that's one of them because, I mean, you can say like, you know, I did some research on this and this is what I found. Is this correct? But a lot of times when it's arguing against what the veterinarian is telling you, you know, Google cannot tell you what your veterinarian is seeing. You know, I've definitely had people who I've diagnosed their pet with something deadly, and they said, well, Google said they just have an upset stomach. I'm like, but I'm physically seeing this. Like I know what I am seeing. So, you know, if you go off of what Google says, unfortunately, your pet is going to pass away at home very quickly.
Mhm.
Versus, you know, you have to trust what I'm telling you because Google cannot do a physical exam on your pet.
Mhm.
The other time too is just arguing in general. I do get a lot of people who just want to argue and not believe what I'm trying to tell them. You know, it's one thing to say, you know, can you explain it better to me? Can you explain it more to me? Versus just arguing. Because I feel like that's counterintuitive. Like we're both here to help your pet. Like that's what my job is. That's what I want to do. I'm not here to sell you a bunch of things. Like I really just want to help your pet. And so just listening to those things as well.
Cool. Tyler Sugarman, where in the world do we find you online?
Yeah, on vetsplanationpodcast.com. And then I'm also on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, yes, TikTok, yep.
All the things.
Threads, all the things. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. And we'll have all of those links in the show notes for everybody to go find easily.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And I really hope you come back soon and we can talk about some more specific things that people need to watch for, like GDV and
Yes.
bloat and all of the fun things.
Absolutely. I'm happy to come on anytime.
Wonderful. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.
It is so incredibly important for us to pay attention to our pets' behaviors and know what to watch for. I am fortunate to have in my circle of besties a now retired vet tech who took one look at my deep-chested Shep and said, "You have to know what to watch for." And so she trained me on the early symptoms of stomach torsion. I was able to get Shep to an emergency vet who saved his life. We were able to have another 10 months together, thanks to my knowledge of what to look for and the skillful hands of the surgeons at Fairfield Animal Hospital in Kelowna, British Columbia. Tyler's Vetsplanation YouTube channel is an incredible resource for learning these symptoms and those of many other conditions and illnesses that we have to be watchful for. Thanks for joining us at the Companions Collective. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with a friend or two. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you could leave us a review or rating on your podcast platform. Until next week, tell your dog I said hi.